Turning 68 had never felt like a big deal to me. Birthdays had always been just regular days, another sunrise, another mug of coffee, another list of chores. But that particular morning, the quiet felt off. I got up at 7, made my usual black coffee, and brought it to the wooden table in my kitchen. The fridge hummed steadily. Outside, the street was slowly waking up. Inside my house, though, there was only stillness. I hadn't expected a party. But I had expected a phone call. Maybe just a simple happy birthday, Mom, from my daughter, Lauren. It never came. For 3 years, I'd been putting exactly $1,200 a month into a joint account I shared with Lauren. She'd first asked for the money, claiming that she and her husband, Marcus, were on the verge of financial ruin. "Mom, we're about to lose the house," she'd told me one night, her voice shaking. "We don't know what else to do." I was a widow who'd spent decades in administrative work, saving diligently and staying out of debt to build a modest cushion for myself. I wasn't rich, but I had enough to help my daughter, so I did. I told myself that good mothers sometimes have to sacrifice. What I didn't realize was that I'd quietly turned into their emergency fund, their safety net, and eventually, their personal bank. At 8:15 that morning, I picked up my tablet while finishing my coffee. I skimmed the news, then scrolled idly through social media. The very first photo on my screen froze me in place. There was Lauren. Marcus stood beside her, and between them was his mother, Sylvia. All three were at an airport, decked out in absurd Hawaiian leis, grinning like they'd just hit the jackpot. The caption underneath read, "Surprise trip to Hawaii for the woman who's always believed in us." I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. My coffee turned sour in my mouth. For years, Lauren had insisted they were barely keeping up with their mortgage. She'd cried about overdue bills. She'd asked for extra cash whenever some new expense came up. And yet here they were, gearing up for a trip to Hawaii. I didn't cry. Something inside me just went cold. I pulled up my banking app. The joint account showed a balance of $43,200. I stared at the figure. $43,200. 3 years of my money. Money I'd believed was keeping a roof over my daughter's head, money they'd evidently been quietly stashing away for themselves. I didn't phone Lauren. I didn't phone Marcus. Instead, I selected the full balance and moved it into my own savings account. In the memo field, I typed, "Funds returned." Then I hit confirm. The account balance fell to 0. I set my phone face down on the table. For the first time in ages, I felt an odd sense of calm. I wasn't going to spend my birthday pleading with my daughter for an explanation. I was going to reclaim my life. I put on my shoes and walked 4 blocks to the local hardware store. "Morning, George," I said to the man behind the counter. "I need your toughest deadbolt." He raised an eyebrow. "Replacing an old one, something like that?" Lauren had a spare key to my house. She'd always acted like it partly belonged to her. Letting herself in, dumping boxes in my guest room, raiding my fridge, showing up unannounced. That key stood for more than entry to my home. It stood for entry to me. I wasn't handing that over anymore. Back home, I pried off the old lock and fitted the new one myself. 15 minutes later, I turned the key. Click. The sound was oddly satisfying. Then my phone started ringing. Lauren. I let it go. A few minutes passed and she called again. Then once more. Finally, I picked up. "Mom." Her voice was tight with panic. "What did you do to the account?" I said nothing. Marcus's card got declined at the airport. Our flight boards in 2 hours. I gazed out at my garden. "Lauren," I said calmly. "The money is back where it belongs, with me." A long pause followed. Then Marcus snatched the phone. "Evelyn, listen to me. This has to be some kind of banking error. We need that transferred back right now." I nearly laughed. No error, I said. The arrangement is finished. Your vacation should have been funded with your own money. I hung up. Then I switched my phone off entirely. My birthday had barely started, but I already understood something important. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting around for my family to tell me what I was worth. I'd finally decided that for myself. After the call, I made myself some lunch, slowly chopping vegetables and listening to the steady thump of the knife on the cutting board. My hands were steady. I knew Lauren and Marcus wouldn't just take this quietly, but they'd lost access to their money. More than that, they'd lost access to me. I finished my salad, tidied the kitchen, and headed to the guest room. For years, Lauren had used it as her personal storage unit, clothes she never wore, shoes still boxed up, shopping bags, a pricey espresso machine she swore she'd get around to using someday. I started hauling everything outside. If they had money for Hawaii, they could find space for their own belongings. I stacked the boxes neatly under the covered porch. About an hour later, tires screeched into my driveway. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Lauren was already knocking on my front door before I got there. Mom, open the door. I walked over but didn't touch the handle. Instead, I cracked open the small frosted window beside the door. Lauren stood there, face flushed with anger. Marcus lingered behind her, glancing nervously toward the street. The lock's new, I said. What did you do? Lauren demanded. You ruined everything. I took my money back. You knew we were at the airport. I did. Do you even know what today is? I looked at her steadily. My birthday. She froze. Neither of us spoke. Marcus stepped forward. This is unbelievably cruel, he said. We promised Sylvia this trip. She's been counting down to it for months. Then you should have paid for it yourselves. You don't understand. No, I cut in. I understand completely. I laid it all out for them, 3 years of monthly transfers, $43,200 total, money that was supposedly saving them from foreclosure but had apparently sat untouched while they planned a luxury getaway. Lauren's face shifted. You gave us that money. I gave it because you told me you were about to lose your home. We were struggling. You were pocketing my money while planning a vacation. Her eyes welled with furious tears. You're my mother. And you're an adult, I said. She stared at me as though those words had cut deeper than anything else I'd said. I pointed toward the porch. Your things are out there. Take them today. Whatever's left tomorrow goes to charity. You can't just kick me out. You haven't lived here in years, Lauren. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I shut the window. Behind it, I heard her pound on the door once more, and then the sound stopped. A few minutes later came the scrape of boxes being dragged across the porch, followed by a car pulling away. I went back inside. The house felt different, not empty, just lighter. I switched my phone back on. Several missed calls and messages were waiting. One was from my son, Adrian. Mom, happy birthday. I'll call tonight. Is something going on with Lauren? She sent me a voice memo saying you've lost your mind. I smiled sadly. Lauren had always been skilled at shaping the narrative. I texted back, thank you, sweetheart. Everything's fine. I just made a financial decision. We'll talk tonight. At 8 that evening, Adrian called on video. His face appeared on my tablet screen. Mom, you look relaxed, he said. I am. He frowned. Lauren's called me 3 times. She says you stole her savings and ruined Sylvia's vacation. I reached for the papers on my coffee table. I didn't steal anything. I turned the camera toward the documents, 3 years of bank statements, screenshots of Lauren pleading for mortgage help, and the photo from the airport. Adrian studied it all. How much were you sending every month? $1,200. He did the math silently. That's 43,200. Exactly. His expression hardened. Mom, Lauren told me you refused to help them years ago. Said you couldn't afford it. I was paying my own bills. Adrian rubbed his forehead. She's been telling everyone a completely different version. He went quiet for a moment. Then he said, I've been covering Marcus's car payments since January. I stared at him. What? They told me they were on the brink of bankruptcy. Said they needed help supporting Sylvia. He shook his head. I can't believe it. What kind of car is it? He hesitated. A 2023. I shook my head. Cancel the payments. I already did. He looked ashamed. Mom, I'm sorry. I should have asked more questions. So should I? No. They lied to both of us. For the first time that day, I realized the real problem wasn't only what Lauren had taken from me, she'd dragged everyone else into the same deception, and now the truth was starting to come apart at the seams. Adrian looked straight into the camera. So what happens now? I glanced down the hallway. At the end of it sat Lauren's old bedroom. The room that had once belonged to my daughter as a child, a room she'd kept treating as hers long after she'd moved out. I smiled faintly. I think, I said, I'm finally going to take that room back too. Adrian laughed. Good. After we hung up, I walked to the guest room and opened the door. For years, I'd been afraid of upsetting my daughter. That night, I understood something new. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. Sometimes it starts the moment you stop being scared of it. The next morning, I woke with more energy than I'd felt in years. There was something freeing about finally making choices without worrying how Lauren might react. I made coffee, drew open the curtains, and looked down the hallway toward her old room. The door sat slightly ajar. For nearly a decade, that room had gone untouched. Lauren had moved out after marrying Marcus, but she'd kept calling it my room. She stored clothes there, stacked boxes against the walls, and treated it like she could waltz back in whenever she pleased. That was over now. I drove to the hardware store and bought paint, a clean white for 3 walls and a soft sage green for the 4th. The room would become a reading and sewing nook. Something just for me. By noon, I'd moved the furniture, cleared the shelves, and started painting. The first coat of white covered the faded pink surprisingly fast. I was halfway through the second wall when I heard the front gate creak. I stopped. Nobody knocked. A few seconds later came a soft tap on the front window. I already knew who it was. I set down the roller and wiped my hands. When I opened the door, she looked nothing like the woman who'd stood there the day before. Her hair was a mess, her eyes puffy, her whole body drained. Mom, she said quietly. I waited. Adrian canceled Marcus's car payments. He made his own choice. You turned him against us. No, I said. He saw the statements. She glanced past me, and her eyes landed on the freshly painted wall. You painted my room? I painted my new study. Her face fell. For once, she didn't argue right away. She just stood there, staring into the house, and I could almost watch the realization sink in, this wasn't temporary. I wasn't just angry for a day, waiting to forgive her. I was rebuilding my life. You can't do this, she whispered. I already have. Her eyes filled with tears. Mom, we're drowning. I said nothing. Marcus put the Hawaii tickets on credit cards because he figured the account would cover them. If we cancel now, we lose most of that money. That's not my problem. If we go, we can't even afford food. Then don't go. She looked at me, desperate. Please. Just give me half. No. Mom, I'm begging you. You've been begging me for 3 years. This is different. How? She had no answer. I watched her clutch the strap of her purse. Then she said, the mortgage thing got complicated. Really? Yes. Then show me the paperwork. Show me the foreclosure notice. Show me the missed payment letters. Show me anything that proves your house was ever actually at risk. Her silence said everything. I crossed my arms. When did you buy the Hawaii tickets? She swallowed. I don't remember. Yes, you do. November. Her face drained of color. I remembered that month clearly. Lauren had called me in tears, saying the roof needed emergency repairs, asking for another $2,000 out of my Christmas savings. That same month, apparently, she'd bought plane tickets. You were planning a vacation while telling me your house was falling apart. It wasn't like that. Then explain it. She couldn't. A bird chirped somewhere nearby, and the ordinary sound made the silence between us even heavier. Finally, Lauren murmured, Marcus handled most of it. I shook my head. You're his wife. You were both responsible. She wiped her cheek. I thought you'd always help me. I thought you'd always tell me the truth. Her composure cracked, and for a second I saw the little girl she used to be. But she wasn't that little girl anymore. She was a grown woman who'd made her own choices, and those choices belonged to her. Go home, Lauren, I said gently. Sit down with Marcus and sort out your finances. What about us? You need to learn to stand on your own without leaning on me. She looked at me. Are you seriously never going to help me again? Not financially. She lowered her eyes and turned toward the driveway. Before she reached the gate, she paused. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. No. She glanced back. I love you. Then why does this feel like punishment? Because consequences can hurt even when nobody's trying to hurt you. She didn't answer. I watched her walk away, then shut the door. The new deadbolt clicked into place. I went back to the room and picked up my roller. Stroke by stroke, the old pink vanished. That afternoon, I got another message, this time not from Lauren, but from Sylvia. She wanted to come by. I already knew what that meant. She believed Lauren and Marcus had been wronged, and she was coming to say so. I brewed a fresh pot of tea, sat in my living room, and waited. Around noon the next day, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Sylvia standing on my porch in a spotless outfit, her expression stiff with disapproval. I took a slow breath and opened the door. Come in, I said. Sylvia smiled without any warmth. I think we need to talk. I stepped aside. Yes. I think we do. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of anything anyone in my family might say, because the truth was finally on my side. Sylvia sat on my sofa with her legs crossed, scanning my living room like she was appraising a property. I poured tea into 2 cups and set one in front of her. She didn't touch it. Evelyn, she began, I think this whole situation has gotten completely out of hand. I sat across from her. I agree. Lauren is devastated. I imagine she is. She feels like you abandoned her. I didn't abandon her. I stopped funding her. Sylvia's expression tightened. You're her mother. She's an adult, and you have the money to help them. I met her eyes. That's not the point. It absolutely is. If you have the resources and your daughter needs help, why wouldn't you give it? Because she lied about why she needed it. Sylvia waved a hand dismissively. Families don't keep score. I nearly smiled. Family shouldn't have to. She leaned in. Lauren has always been a devoted daughter. Then she shouldn't have lied to me. You're making this sound far worse than it is. I reached for the folder beside me and set 3 years of bank statements on the coffee table. Do you know how much I sent them? Sylvia glanced down. No. $43,200. Her eyebrows shot up. I kept going. I sent that money because Lauren told me their home was in danger, that they were struggling to keep a roof over their heads. Sylvia said nothing. Meanwhile, they were planning a Hawaiian vacation. They had every right to take a vacation. After I'd already covered their bills. Sylvia's expression hardened. You're punishing them because they wanted to do something kind for me. No. I'm refusing to fund something I was never even told about. She glanced toward the window. Lauren said you promised to support them. I promised to help during a crisis. And this is your version of helping? My version of helping is letting adults deal with the consequences of their own choices. Sylvia finally lifted her teacup, took one sip, and set it down immediately. You're being selfish. I felt the old urge rise in me, the instinct to defend myself, but I let it pass. Perhaps, I said. She looked surprised. I continued. If protecting my savings after years of being deceived counts as selfish, then I'm fine with that. Sylvia stood. I hope you're satisfied. I am. She walked to the door, then turned back. You've wrecked your relationship with your daughter. No, I said quietly. Her choices did that. Sylvia left. I closed the door and stood there for a long moment. The house was quiet again, but this time the quiet felt like peace. That evening, I finished painting the study. The sage green wall glowed beautifully in the fading light. I pulled my favorite chair beside the window and set a small reading lamp next to it. For years, that room had been frozen in the past. Now it belonged to my future. On Friday morning, I woke to another message from Lauren. We canceled the trip. Marcus is furious. Sylvia won't speak to me. I hope you're happy. I stared at the screen. A month earlier, I might have called her right away. I might have apologized. I might have offered money just to end the tension. But I knew better now. Lauren had made a choice, then another, and then another. Those consequences weren't mine to shoulder. I set my phone aside. Around 11, I wandered into the garden. The morning air was crisp, and sunlight spilled over the flowers. For once, I wasn't thinking about bills or calculating what I could spare for someone else. I was thinking about myself. That afternoon, I packed a small overnight bag, a few clothes, a book, my toiletries, nothing more. I'd found a quiet bed and breakfast tucked in the mountains, several hours away, and booked the room using a small portion of the money I'd reclaimed. It wasn't an extravagant trip, and it wasn't meant to prove anything. I simply wanted somewhere peaceful. Before leaving, I walked through my house. The kitchen was spotless. The new lock was secure. The study was finished. Everything looked familiar yet somehow entirely different. I'd spent years believing my home existed for everyone else's comfort. Now I understood, I deserved to feel comfortable in it too. My ride showed up just after lunch. I locked the front door, checked the deadbolt twice, and smiled. As the car pulled away, I glanced back at the house. I wasn't leaving to escape anything. I was leaving because I finally had somewhere worth coming back to. For the first time in years, my future didn't revolve around saving somebody else. It was mine. The mountains were exactly what I needed. No ringing phone, no frantic texts, no family drama waiting for me the moment I opened my eyes. I spent that first morning on the porch of the little inn, sipping coffee and watching mist drift between the trees. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't thinking about what anyone needed from me. I was thinking about what I wanted. I read for hours, then wandered through the small mountain town, ducking into shops whenever something caught my eye. Nobody there knew me. Nobody knew my family. Nobody expected me to fix anything. That simple freedom felt almost indulgent. When I got home the next afternoon, I noticed something right away. The house felt different, not because anything had changed while I was gone, but because I had. I unpacked my bag, set my books on the shelf in my new study, sat by the window, and looked at the sage green wall. I smiled. A week earlier, I'd worried that setting boundaries would tear my family apart. Now I understood that boundaries weren't destroying anything. They were simply exposing what had already been broken. The following weeks were rough for Lauren and Marcus. They had to cancel the trip. The airline only refunded part of the cost. Their credit card balance stayed put. Marcus's expensive car payment became impossible to ignore once Adrian stopped covering it, and eventually they sold the car. Lauren went back to working full-time. For years she'd told me that cutting her hours was necessary because of their finances. Now she was working longer hours because there was no one left to bail her out. I didn't celebrate their hardship. I took no pleasure in watching them struggle. I simply stopped fixing things for them. Adrian kept calling regularly, and our relationship shifted too. We talked more honestly. He admitted how humiliated he felt once he realized how much money he'd handed over to Marcus. I should have known something was off, he told me one evening. You trusted your sister. I trusted the story she gave me. So did I. There's no point punishing ourselves forever for believing someone we love. What matters is what we do next. After learning the truth, Adrian started rebuilding his finances. He stopped paying bills that weren't his to carry and began saving for his own family again. Months passed. Lauren's messages grew sparser. At first, I thought that was a good sign. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I stared at it a moment before answering. Hello. Hi, Mom. Her voice sounded different, no anger, no accusations, no crisis. Just exhaustion. Hi, Lauren. How are you? I'm okay. How about you? Tired. I smiled slightly. Tired isn't always a bad thing. No, she admitted. I guess it isn't. Silence stretched between us. Then she said, I just got home from work. How's the job? Hard. But it feels good having my own paycheck again. I leaned back in my chair. That sounds like a good thing. It is. Another pause. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't respond right away. She continued. I know I've apologized before, but I don't think I really understood what I did. I kept telling myself you were helping because you could afford to. I convinced myself that since you were my mother, you were supposed to keep helping. Her voice cracked. But I lied to you. Yes, I said gently. I know. And you lied to Adrian too. I know. She took a breath. I don't expect you to trust me right away. That would be impossible. I understand. Then came a question I never anticipated. Could I come by sometime? I looked around my study, the room that had once been hers, the room that was now mine. Yes, I said. A long silence followed. Really? Yes. But things are going to be different this time. I know. No asking for money. I know. No manufactured emergencies to pressure me. I know. And if you want advice, you can ask for it, but I won't solve your problems for you. Her voice softened. Okay, Mom. We ended the call soon after. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I just felt relief. The door between us wasn't wide open, but it wasn't sealed shut forever either. That Sunday, Lauren showed up carrying a small paper bag. She stood on my porch and waited for me to open the door. She didn't use a key. And that mattered more than she probably realized. Inside the bag were pastries. I remembered you like these, she said. I smiled. I do. We sat at the kitchen table. For the first time in years, my daughter wasn't asking me for money, wasn't explaining some crisis, wasn't blaming someone else for her troubles. She was simply sitting with me. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was enough. I'd spent years mistaking sacrifice for love. I thought being a good mother meant endlessly giving, endlessly forgiving, endlessly shielding my children from consequences. I finally understood that love without limits can turn into something unhealthy. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is stop carrying what was never yours to carry. Lauren needed to learn that, and so did I. My life didn't shrink when I stopped rescuing everyone. It grew, stranger, more honest, and finally, truly mine. 3 months later, my life had settled into a rhythm I barely recognized, and I loved it. My new study had become my favorite room in the house. The sage green wall caught the afternoon light beautifully, and my reading chair sat by the window where I could watch birds flit through the garden. My finances had stabilized. The $1,200 monthly transfers had stopped for good. The $43,200 I'd reclaimed sat safely in my savings account, finally serving the purpose I'd always intended for it. My own future. Adrian visited more often now, bringing his kids along, and the house filled with their laughter every other weekend. He'd managed to repair his finances after cutting off the payments he'd been covering for Marcus. He seemed lighter these days. So did I. Lauren was different too. She kept her distance. She no longer had a key to my house, and she understood that showing up unannounced wouldn't get her through the door. Her messages came occasionally and carefully. Simple greetings at first, then slowly turning into real conversations. She told me about work, complained about being tired, mentioned that she and Marcus were working to pay down their debts. They'd sold his pricey car to chip away at the credit card balance left behind by the canceled trip. None of it was easy, but it was theirs to manage, and that distinction mattered. One Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Lauren. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was quiet. "Hi, Lauren. How are you?" "Tired. Just got home from work. How's everything with you?" "Better." I smiled. "That's good." She hesitated, then said, "I wanted to ask you something." I waited. "Would it be okay if I came over Sunday?" I looked around my study. There was a time that question would have sounded strange. Lauren had never used to ask permission. She simply appeared. Now she was asking. "Of course," I said. "Really? Sunday afternoon work? I could bring pastries. You know I won't say no to pastries." She laughed softly. "What time?" 5. 5 works. Another pause. "Thanks, Mom." We hung up. I set the phone down and picked my book back up. I wasn't pretending the past hadn't happened. I wasn't forgetting the lies. I wasn't about to hand Lauren another key or another bank account. Forgiveness didn't require foolishness. Trust wasn't something I owed her, it was something she'd have to earn back. And maybe that was the biggest lesson I'd learned. Love doesn't mean letting someone hurt you over and over. It doesn't mean covering every bill out of fear they'll struggle without you. It doesn't mean staying silent while someone takes advantage of your kindness. And it certainly doesn't mean emptying out your own life so someone else can live comfortably. For years, I believed that saying no would make me a bad mother. Instead, saying no taught me how to become a healthier one. When you keep shielding an adult from the consequences of their own decisions, you're not really helping them, sometimes you're just teaching them that consequences are someone else's job. I'd spent years shouldering burdens that were never mine to carry: Lauren's mortgage, Marcus's debts, their vacations, their emergencies, their excuses. I carried it all because I thought that's what love demanded. But love shouldn't leave you dreading every phone call. It shouldn't turn you into an ATM with a birthday. And it shouldn't cost you your dignity just to keep the peace in your own family. The morning after my 68th birthday had started with disappointment: no call, no message, no celebration. Just a photograph that revealed the truth. But that photo had given me something far more valuable than a birthday greeting. It gave me clarity. I took back my money. I changed my locks. I reclaimed my home. I reclaimed a room that had been stuck in my daughter's childhood and turned it into a space for my own future. Most importantly, I reclaimed my voice. I learned that boundaries aren't punishments. They're instructions. They show people where your responsibility ends and theirs begins. And sometimes the strongest boundary is a closed door, not because you hate the person standing outside it, but because you finally realized you deserve to feel safe on the other side. On Sunday, Lauren arrived at exactly 5 o'clock, holding a box of pastries, and waited. She didn't try the door. She didn't reach for an old key. She simply rang the bell. I opened it. We looked at each other for a moment. Then I smiled. "Come in." She smiled back. "Thank you, Mom." I stepped aside, and the door opened. This time, I wasn't opening it out of fear of saying no. I was opening it because I wanted to. And there was a world of difference between the two. My life belonged to me again. And for the first time, I understood that protecting my peace didn't make me the villain. It made me the author of my own story. Sometimes happiness begins with two simple words, no more.